Hello, beautiful humans. It's showtime.
Oh, there's magic coming. Oh, there's magic coming. Oh, there's magic coming. Where you gonna be tonight? Oh, there's magic coming. Oh, there's magic coming. There's magic coming. Get ready for the rest of your life.
Hello, my dearest darlings. For once, I am starting more or less on time today. Welcome to SassafrasCast, a podcast full of witchy insights to help you lead your sassiest life. I am Rorie Kelly, a tarot reader, singer-songwriter, and all-around personal growth nerd from Long Island, New York. In a moment, we will begin with the Witchy Weather Report, but first, a shout out to my patrons, several of which are already hanging out in the chat. Hello, friends. We have Savannah working on a grimoire, relaxing in bed, like that's the best possible way to listen to SassafrasCast, everybody. We have Grayson knitting, which is also the best possible way to listen to SassafrasCast. The best possible way is however you want to listen, if you can't tell. All right, time to shout out for my patrons. If you did not know, you can support this podcast at patreon.com/Sassafras Tarot for $1 a month or more. I record all of these episodes live, and my patrons get a private YouTube link before each one, so they can tune in for the live recording, hang out in the chat, ask questions, and get them answered in real time. They also get access to a witchy Discord server where we talk about all things spiritual and wonderful and weird, and a shout out in every episode. Here we go. Thank you, Amanda Little, Patty Bell from soulshepherd.love, Melissa Marie, Rachel Miller, Anti-Fragile Tarot, Grayson, Savannah Tillett, B from Whimsical Solace, Millie Orozco, Ruby Marchetti, Brittany, Hannah Westlock, and Brittany Campbell. That's right, we now have 2 Brittnys. We are blessed by big Brittany energy, and I feel like it will only make SassafrasCast more delicious. I'm so grateful that you are all in my world. Today, we are going to be talking about physical and emotional healing, and I am going to I was writing this episode and I kind of came up with a laundry list dump of things to help with healing and recovery. A psychospiritual toolbox, if you will. But first, it is time for the Witchy Weather Report. We are working this month in my Patreon with the Tarot of the Cloisters, an awesome round deck. We just started doing this where every month we are going to be working with a different tarot deck. And I'm not really doing any real specific thing of like doing a card every single day, but I'm pulling cards throughout the month from this deck around a certain topic. This month, the topic is healing, and the deck is the Tarot of the Cloisters. This is by popular demand. Several people saw me read with this deck during Patron Palooza and requested it. I love this deck. It's a beautiful round deck. It's super spiffy. And we are going to pull our Witchy Weather Report card from the Tarot of the Cloisters. Right meow. Gotta love those shuffling noises. Our card for the month, thank goodness, is the Chariot, and it pretty much came out right side out. So what's interesting, right side up. What's interesting about this deck is it's round. If you are watching this on YouTube, did you know you can watch this on YouTube? You can see me holding this deck up with the Chariot facing the camera, but let me describe it to you in case you are not. This is a round card in a stained glass style, and we have a knightly person, someone all dressed up in, battle armor, riding in a chariot. On the front of the chariot is a pentacle, and the chariot is being pulled by a white horse and a black horse. I think this is really important because to me, this screams the message that in order to move forward powerfully in our lives, we have to acknowledge both what is in light and what is in shadow. We have to not toxic positivity ourselves, and you will hear some factions who believe really strongly in like the New Thought movement and manifesting, all of which I'm down with, by the way. I have no objections, except when people kind of turn it into an excuse for toxic positivity, right? When it's like, oh, your thoughts are things, and everything you think about will manifest in your life, so be careful what you think. Like, that feels like a real slippery slope to shame us out of like having feelings and acknowledging that there are challenges in life and perhaps injustice in the larger world that really does need to be addressed. And we don't address things by sweeping them under the rug. We don't address things. Nothing was ever fixed by not talking about it. So it's really important that in order to move forward, we acknowledge the good and the bad. We acknowledge the light and the shadow, both in the world and in ourselves, right? We acknowledge our flaws and our weaknesses, and ideally honor ourselves as whole and complete beings. So if you are struggling to move forward and beating yourself up about it, this may be a part of what's holding you back. This is a lesson I have learned over time. And that's what I really want to focus on with today's card, the Chariot, which is that when we are whole and we show up for ourselves as whole beings, we can move forward. And I don't want that to be misconstrued. Because I think some people hear the word whole and are like, oh gosh, I don't feel whole. I feel incomplete. Can I not move forward? I don't mean it that way. I mean that we are whole in that we are humans with flaws. We have struggles. We probably have issues that we keep coming back to in life that are like, why can't I get past this? And the reason is because if it's worth getting past, it's really going to take time. It wouldn't be an issue if it were easy. And when we acknowledge that we are whole people, meaning we have flaws, we have dark spots, we have personal challenges, that is when we are able to powerfully move forward. When we try to plan our lives as if we don't have a shadow side, as if we don't have, the part of us that is struggling or self-sabotages or even just flat out doesn't want to get out of bed some days, because you know what? Everyone has those days. Then we are not planning a life for us. We are planning a life for some superhuman that doesn't exist. So I'm here to tell you this month in the Witchy Weather Report, plan your success for you as a human being. Don't plan it based around you having to be perfect and you having perfect willpower at all times. And because you're feeling enthusiastic now, assuming you will be able to do all the work and do a big level of slog in order to meet your goals. Instead, plan for the beautiful human that you are. Plan for the fact that you need and deserve rest. Plan for the fact that you will have bad days. Plan for the fact that you will have times when you are feeling dark and questioning everything. Plan for the fact that you are real. You are not a construct in a fairy tale. And love that you are real and love yourself just as you are. And if you struggle with self-love, because I am someone who has spent a lot of my life struggling with self-love and self-kindness, then at the very least, honor yourself as you are. Show up for yourself. The way that you might for a friend. If you've got a friend, the example I always use, if you have a friend who's always like running late or always kind of blurts out the wrong thing at the wrong moment, but they're your friend and you love them and you're like, that's just them being them. It's part of the package. You can show up for yourself in the same way. You can say, this is part of the package. Nobody is perfect. I can still honor myself as a worthwhile human being who also has gifts to offer, who also has something important to give to the world. And that's how we move forward. We don't move forward by denying the reality. We don't move forward by denying the dark stuff. We don't move forward by just having so much willpower that we just are perfect all the time. Nobody is perfect all the time. We cannot all be Lisa Simpson. We move forward by acknowledging that we are humans and planning for it and even celebrating it, right? Because if we weren't humans, we couldn't enjoy the richness of experience. If we didn't have struggles, if we didn't have dark days, if we didn't have difficulties, we couldn't enjoy the sweet, sweet feeling of when we have reached a goal, of when we have accomplished something despite our struggle. That's how it is, my gosh. That's my story today. If you want to move forward, let's acknowledge ourselves as being whole. And the Chariot is about moving forward at nearly a breakneck pace. It is a fast-paced card. The Chariot is like, yeah, we're going hard. Get in, loser. We are reaching our goals right now. And I'm here to tell you that the way to do that is as a whole being, and the Chariot knows that. When you are not just focused, a lot of people focus on the aspect of like, you know what you want and your will is focused. Not just focused, but acknowledging your whole self and honoring your whole self. The person whose goal it is, you're an important part of the picture. That is how we move forward in a healthy and wonderful way. All right, I'm going to get into the main topic. This topic in particular, I feel is, I want to say, a collaborative one, because I know I'm not the only one who has had a nonsense past 2 years, the past 24 months of 2020, and struggled through the first couple of months of 2022. Had some things come up that felt like crises at a time when we are all of us just kind of struggling to get by because we're still processing all the stuff that has happened in the last couple of years. And so when I say this is a collaborative topic, it means that I want to hear what you have to say about it. If you are a patron, if you're in the chat, I know you may be knitting or working on your grimoire, and I support that and don't wish to interrupt you. But if you have something to say, it's important to me and I want to share it. I never feel like I am this important, like, pedestal person who has all the right answers. I feel like we grow together in community, and that is what I try to build my life around. So in this topic in particular, which is a topic about healing and recovery and showing up for ourselves during that process, I want us to acknowledge that this is a collaborative process that does not happen alone, and that multiple perspectives are important. And on any given day, 4 or 5 different perspectives on the same problem may actually be what gets you through the day. I think that's important. We don't have to be super stuck in one viewpoint. Even if it seems on the surface like a positive and helpful viewpoint, there are times when we will need a different one. We need to be malleable and flexible. Okie dokie. So today's topic, hydration checkpoint. I'm going to take a sip of water because I've got a lot to share with you today. And I suggest you, listening or watching at home, also make sure to hydrate at this time. Let's take good care of ourselves and our bodies. Okay. Today's topic is physical and emotional healing. And I am not sure if this is a continuation of last month's episode or perhaps a companion piece, because we also talked last month about how to carry ourselves through when facing the bummer cards of the tarot, when facing those situations that we all face in our lives that are deeply challenging to us. What I am sure of is that we collectively need more healing. I don't have to tell you what's been going on in the world the last 2 years, nor do I have to tell you the hardships that you personally have faced in that time, because I'm sure they are real and significant. I don't know a single person who hasn't had to go through real and significant personal challenges either in the last 2 years. All of us are dealing with all of it. And so I want this episode to be a sort of psychospiritual toolbox for our healing. Whether you are still in crisis, in the aftermath, or it's complicated, right? Like that's your Facebook status about your current situation. Maybe I'm in crisis, maybe I'm not. Who can tell day by day? Whether you're suffering is spiritual or emotional or physical, I want this episode to help us find a balm in our time of need. And it is my hope and intention that this becomes something that people can turn to when they're struggling, whether you're listening to it right now as I broadcast it, or whether you're someone who finds the podcast in the future and is going back through. And I hope this information gets you when you need it, when it can be helpful. And if you are that person, thank you. You're awesome. Thank you for finding me. Let's get going. I kind of just put together a laundry list of tools to put into our psychospiritual toolbox for healing. Tool number 1, the shit that you know helps. I am going to be saying bad words on this podcast if you didn't already know that. So this is personal. We all kind of know a few things that we know to help. And so that's why the first tool in our toolbox is the shit that we know helps. What is it that makes you feel a little more like yourself? What has lifted your spirits or improved your physical well-being in the past? This is a personal question. Personally, I feel more like me when I am writing in my journal regularly and when I am spending time with my own music and creativity every day. I also feel physically and mentally healthier when I am taking walks regularly. And I also totally drop the ball on all of these things when I am feeling overwhelmed. And every time I come back to them, I'm like, oh yeah, this helps so much. So I want you to think about it. What's on your, oh yeah, this helps list? This is not an opportunity to judge yourself for not doing it. So any shame or self-judgment or blame, you can just throw that right out the window. That is not welcome today. Instead, literally just pick up what helps and see if it helps. Like, that's the only thing we're doing with this tool. We're not yelling at ourselves for not using it more consistently. We're just going for it and being glad that it's there for us. Okay, conversely, our second tool is making a list of what sucks. Let's identify what is sucking for us, and let's identify it really specifically, because I think it's easy. I was just talking to a friend yesterday who has also kind of been through the mill in the last 2 years, again, in personal as well as, you know, the grand way that we have all been affected by this pandemic and everything like that. And we were talking about how easy it is to say, well, I know what my problems are, and kind of name the big problem, right? And the big problem might be, for example, like this job that is sucking the life out of me, this toxic person in my life, this health situation that I can't seem to get a handle on and keeps throwing me for a loop. We can all kind of identify those large problems, right? But I want us to dig a little deeper, even if it feels obvious and dumb, and ask ourselves, what is it? How is it touching us today? What energy that is sucky is touching us today? Is it that we feel overwhelmed? Is it that because of the circumstances, we feel out of control of our own lives? Is it because we feel that the clock is ticking and we haven't, had the opportunity to catch up? Is it because we feel like it's always struggle energy and we just need a break? Is it something else? Is it that we just feel someone keeps cutting us down and that hurts our feelings and we're walking around feeling just a little bit wounded every day? So the reason I want us to get specific is because I want to identify what specifically is sucking in our lives, and I want us to take a little bit of responsibility to try and balance the scales with opposite energy. This doesn't mean your problems are your fault. Your problems are not your fault. We all have stuff that we go through. We are, a billion different biochemical meat computers on a planet that, generations of other biochemical meat computers have lived on and affected for the last several thousand years. Like, it's not your fault if you're struggling. At the same time, we can say, okay, I'm struggling with this and I can choose to bring some better energy into my life to balance the sucky energy. That's what I'm saying here. So for me, I came up with a list of resolutions for the month of February, and I call them resolutions, but they're really more like daily practices that I think might make me feel better. Because I'll be real honest with you, I've been going through a rough time and I need to feel better. And so my intention with this is I came up with a list of what I really felt shittiest about, and then tried to give myself some small and concrete way to turn the tables. An example is that for me, I have this constant feeling in my life of time overwhelm, of feeling like I can't catch up, of feeling like there's so much going on and I'm barely keeping my head above water and I'm always in a rush. And so on my resolutions list, the daily practice that I put on the list is take all the time you need. I look at this list every day, either at the beginning of the day or the end of the day. And when I am feeling rushed or stressed to get a lot done, if I am packing up for a gig, if I am trying to get my podcast done before I run out to a gig, for example, which is literally happening today, I remind myself that it is literally my job this month to take the time that I need. And it's a little bit of suspension of disbelief, right? There's a fear that if I don't rush, that I don't know, like I'll just never catch up and I'll always be overwhelmed for the rest of my life. And that's like that's kind of big. That's a big thought. And if I give myself permission to just take the time I need in this moment, generally I do have enough time and I end up feeling a lot better on the journey. It helps. So let's identify the energy that feels like it is sucking the life out of you and ask ourselves how we can give ourselves permission to bring opposite energy into our lives in small daily practices. This is a really good, practical way to feel better, I have found. By the way, we're starting with kind of practical. We're going to get progressively more spiritual and woo-woo as we go, as always. I invite you to take what you need and leave the rest. I invite you to take anything I share with a grain of salt, that it has to feel good within your own frame of reference and your own experience. and to allow yourself to engage in practices that are helpful without having to attach a whole lot of belief to them, because I think that really helps me. But if it doesn't help you, don't do it. Okay, next in our toolbox, tool number 3 is to be in relationship with your body. Like, oh no. I say that because, like, I know I'm not the only one who struggles with that. But when we are fully embodied, we can feel more grounded. We can have a better handle on things like anxiety and depression. And the truth is, we are already in relationship with our bodies. We can't help it. Like, we live here. And so the only choice we have is to choose whether we try to show up and make it a good relationship or whether we let that relationship wither. So if you are struggling physically or emotionally or spiritually right now, it is possible that certain aspects of our relationship with our body have devolved, have become neglectful or toxic or just bleh, right? So I want to try on the concept of making deposits into the love bank. This is something I talk about in interpersonal relationships a lot, where if you want a good relationship with someone, we need to make some deposits into the love bank, because invariably we will have misunderstandings. We will have times when we just can't see eye to eye and we're both feeling hurt about it. We will have times when we hurt each other no matter how much we are trying not to. And so when we make deposits into the love bank, the idea is that if those other times, those challenging times, are like withdrawals, well, we're putting deposits into the bank to cover those withdrawals. You know, we are making sure that we and the people we care about really feel that this relationship matters to us and that we value each other, so that when it is a struggling time, we can remember that. What if we apply this to our relationship with our bodies? Let's thank our bodies for the hard work they are doing for us. Let's check in with our bodies, like for 2 minutes, and just ask, hey body, do you have everything you need right now? And if the answer is like, no, I don't, then the question is, okay, what would be most helpful? What feels like the most urgent? And the answer, I'm going to be real, like the answer might feel impossible. Often I check in and the answer is like, I need a massage that I can't afford. I need a nap for the next 2 weeks. I need to take every day off for the rest of the month. And instead of being like, well, I can't do that, oh well, and moving on with our lives, which I have a bad habit of doing, can we instead choose to affirm to our bodies, like, yeah, we deserve those things. A massage, a nap, days off, this all says that we are strained, right? And we need rest, and we deserve rest. We deserve our work and play and relaxation to be in balance. And if that is out of balance, then we can at least affirm, hey, we deserve better. And we can maybe take a stab at the next best thing, right? Maybe we can't, go get $100 massage and take a nap for a week, but we can like do some stretching today for 20 minutes. And we can maybe try to have an early bedtime tonight so we get a full 8 or 9 hours of sleep. Yeah, I said 8 or 9, like, oh my gosh. The amount of sleep that we require is 8 hours as human being, and that's an average. That means some people require more, some people require a little less. But the way that productivity culture has kind of chipped away at that over the last 20 years is amazing to me. How now people are like, well, try to get around 8 hours, like good 6 or 7 if you can. And it's like, no, our needs haven't changed. We don't evolve that quickly as organisms. We still need the sleep we need. So let's see what we can do to give ourselves our basic needs being met. Okay. Sorry, that was a little bit of a rant tangent. I have a little bit of a tangent that I always fall into about getting enough sleep, because we tend to shame ourselves for just needing rest, even though we are human meat computers and we can't help it. Now we begin to cross the line into the more psychospiritual side of things. I want to talk about mindfulness, meditation, and breath. I want to encourage us to lean into these things exactly to the extent that they feel nourishing, and to also give ourselves permission to bail if it starts to feel like a to-do list item and starts to feel overwhelming and something that we shame ourselves with. I don't want meditate for 15 minutes to be one more item on the to-do list that we never quite get around to and turns into something we feel bad about it. Instead, I want to give ourselves room to do the exact amount we can each day, because this is a practice that is there for nothing other than our health. It's there to help us feel better. So let's give ourselves room on a day when we feel stressed to the max to just take a small, full, deep breath anytime we get a pause between tasks, in line at the grocery store, right, at a traffic light. Let's allow ourselves to let that count for our practice instead of flogging ourselves and adding, my meditation practice needs work to the list of things that were not good enough. And if it does feel like a delicious idea to take a break from overwhelm and meditate for 15 minutes and we feel we can do it, like, let's do it. And if that meditation happens to turn into a nap, let's also celebrate the fact that we got some rest. That's not a meditation fail. That is a self-care win. Next item in our toolbox, I think we are on item 5. I didn't number these and I regret it. Tool number 5, get help. It's time, when you are struggling, to enlist family members and friends, chosen family, the people you can trust, the people you know you can be vulnerable with. You have the discernment to know who you can show yourself vulnerably to and who is not wise to, because they might bring you further down. So you already have that discernment within you. And you can enlist them to show up for you in ways that are really not actually hard. It can be very hard to ask for help. And sometimes all we need is like a very, very small amount of help, or literally just the affirmation of knowing that a person besides ourselves cares about what we're going through. For me, there are times in my menstrual cycle that I'm really prone to getting dehydrated. And I am also prone to forgetting that I'm prone to getting dehydrated. And so I end up dehydrated and I have a headache and I'm grumpy and unhappy. And something very small that my husband does is remind me to drink water on those days. Speaking of which, my throat is dry. I'm going to drink some water. I hope you will too if you need hydration. So this is a gift to both parties because it's a way for someone to support you in the smallest possible way, just reminding you to show up for yourself. But it's helpful when it comes from an external source. When an external source says, hey, you should really take care of yourself, we no longer feel like we're just being a silly baby. We feel like, okay, yes, I should take care of myself and I will do that because an external party has kind of validated the fact that we're human and we have needs. And also, for that person, it's a gift to be able to help someone get through their day. It's a gift to be able to show up lovingly for someone, especially in a way like that doesn't take a lot of energy. It's easy to show up and be like, hey, don't forget to be nice to yourself, right? There's also, apart from the personal side of getting help, like enlisting friends, family members, whatever, there's a great app I discovered recently called Mindshift App. This app is created by Anxiety Canada, which is a real organization that I'm just happy that it exists. And it is intended to help people who are struggling with anxiety. I am someone who struggles with anxiety, but I believe that the tools in this app can be helpful to a lot of people. It uses some of the principles in cognitive behavioral therapy, as well as just general principles that are scientifically driven to help us feel better in the moment. Things like breathing and grounding ourselves in the present moment. Things like, this is where the cognitive behavioral therapy comes in, challenging negative thoughts and taking ourselves calmly through a list of questions to ask ourselves if maybe we can gain a better perspective. And the app kind of does that for us, which is helpful. It's a third party doing it for us, so we don't have to have the energy of doing it ourselves when we're already spiraling. It's a free app. I think it's really great, and it's got some resources. I'll put a link to it in the show notes. It's called Mindshift App. All right, this is going to be tool number 6, I think. I'm going to talk about ancestors. This is a topic I don't talk about a lot, and I have not spent a lot of my practice until recently delving into. Ancestor work, whether blood ancestors or energetic ancestors. I'm currently reading a really great book. It's called The Witch at the Forest's Edge, and I'm absolutely loving it. It's written by one of the hosts of the Betwixt and Between podcast, which is another really great witchy podcast that I really love. And in the book, she talks about ancestor work and how some of the challenges people have with ancestor work are, one, I may not feel positively about all my blood relatives. I might not feel positively about turning to those people as ancestors if we have, critical disagreements about right and wrong, or if they have been harmful. And two, the concept that you might feel bereft of ancestors. You may literally not know your ancestry or your heritage, or you may feel that disconnect. And it doesn't acknowledge necessarily, if you're only talking about blood ties, the people who came before you, for example, in other important parts of your identity. So she has this concept of energetic ancestors, which basically looks like people who came before you in a way that touches an important part of who you are. So for me, as a member of the LGBTQIA community, this can look like people who came before me in that community. Both the big public stories, right? Both like Stonewall, and also people whose stories may never have gotten told, but who still had those experiences and were a part of that community. For me as a woman, energetic ancestors may look like the women who came before me in the first and second waves of feminism, who navigated creating change both on a personal and political level, when, I will remind you, it was harder than it is today, because they really did create some positive change. For me as a creative person, this looks like others who have dedicated their lives to their creative passion, whether they were remembered by history or not. So my question for you is, are there parts of your identity that may lead you to acknowledge this energetic type of ancestry? And part two is like a permission slip to freely exclude people from your ancestry if you feel that they are toxic. I have, in my family, there is someone who is in my blood lineage who was abusive to other members of my family, who is objectively a bad person. And I do not include that person when I call on my ancestors, when I make offerings to them, and when I communicate with them. I specifically exclude him because I don't want him around. And let's give ourselves permission to do that. Just as in life, if there's a toxic, harmful person in our lives, we have permission to say, no, I'm going to draw the line here. This is no. So I want to give ourselves permission to do that, and permission to have an ancestor practice that is wholesome and nourishing for us, not one that feels like we have to grapple with these challenges that may in fact be the reason we turn to a spiritual practice, right? Let's allow ourselves to have a nourishing ancestral practice. And ancestor work at its heart can be complex or simple. Like everything, it's a relationship. Since this is a toolbox episode, let's talk about how to do this in a simple way. I find it easy to tie any new habit to an existing task I already do. So recently, I have tied ancestor work to eating my dinner. As I take my first bite of whatever I am having, usually something I've cooked for myself, I offer it up to my ancestors, and I thank them for all that they have done to pave the way for my existence. And then I just eat my dinner. Like, that's it. It's that simple of a practice, but it's a nice little check-in the same way, sending a meme to your friend reminds them that they exist and you care about them and you're thinking about them, Ancestor work can also look like a listening practice. We can ask our ancestors if they have anything to share with us before a meditation or before going to sleep. As with everything I am suggesting in this episode, please use this tool to the extent that it feels helpful, and please put it down immediately if and when it starts to feel overwhelming or hard. These are tools that are supposed to make our lives better and easier because we're talking about healing right now. When we are healing, it's important to allow ourselves to play our lives on easy mode. It's great sometimes to push our boundaries, to explore the edges of our comfort zone. But when we're healing, that's because our boundaries have already been pushed, probably too far. That's because our comfort zone is like screaming for attention. So it's not the time. It's not the time to play on hard mode when we're healing. Instead, we should give ourselves permission to play on easy mode and to use the tools that we have in a way that feels accessible. Tool number 7, I think. Spirit guides and allies, whatever that means to you. Another thing I've taken away from this book, The Witch at the Forest's Edge, which I will link in the show notes. It's the first witchy book in quite a while that I've been truly excited and enriched by. And it doesn't mean I haven't enjoyed other books, but this one came out and like blew my mind in a couple of big ways. One of the concepts of this book is kind of broadly allowing ourselves to acknowledge spirit allies. People talk about working with deities, working with energy, working with the energy of the land, working with ancestors, working with guides, working with our higher selves, and allowing ourselves to just broadly identify those things as allies without having to put a big thing of what you do or don't believe or how your practice is or isn't different from other people and whether that makes it valid. Like, let's just allow ourselves to have some kind of spiritual allyship, some kind of spiritual relationship. And working with spirit allies and guides when we're healing may include creating an ally or guide. Literally giving ourselves permission to create a guide that perhaps we make up from thin air. If you are someone who's interested in chaos magic, this might look like a servitor or a thought form. Or it might look like going through a meditation, and the purpose of the meditation being that you are going to create a guide specifically to help you with your current struggle, that you're going to find them, if that language is more helpful for you, that they'll show up for you. To call for a guide who you may believe already exists, or you may just be like, I need a guide, and if my inner self is creating this guide and it's just a way for me to relate to this topic, that's cool with me. Another thing that might be helpful is working with the specific struggle. Like, if you are having money trouble or health trouble, what would it look like to work with money as a spirit, or to work with health as a spirit? What would it look like to have conversations with that spirit entity? I've had some incredible, admittedly, in my head, conversations in this way that have really changed my perspective on the way I think things. It's, this is one of these things where you can believe it's a really spiritual, deep thing happening with a real spirit, or you can believe it's in your head, but it's a mental exercise that causes such a shift in perspective that it's worth it. And as always, I'm going to tell you, I don't care. What I care about is if it helps me and isn't harming myself or others, then I am down for it. I am down for whatever help I can get at this point in my life. Working with spirits or allies when healing can also look like asking for a little TLC from any allies or guides you work with already. And I want to encourage and give you permission to do that, even if it feels off topic. So in the pagan community, we are rife with correspondence tables, right? And I love them. I love going to Wikipedia and reading the correspondence tables for a certain goal or whatever that I'm working for. We have you go to this goddess for this, and you go to this spirit for this, and you do this for this, and this saint for that, right? And I know people get really into that. For me, it feels a little like collecting baseball cards, and I feel like I would rather connect deeply with a couple of allies rather than have a host of a million of them, right? Although I do use the tarot in that way a little bit. I guess that's 78 allies if I really want to think about it. What if you have already created a relationship with an ally or guide, and you need help right now with something that's not in the correspondence table? That's okay. In my view, I am of the school of thought that rather than petition a complete stranger for every new concern, it's more meaningful to develop a relationship that goes deeper. So let's not limit our view of how an ally can help you based on what's listed in the correspondence table or what's associated with this particular entity. Example, if you've been working with Aphrodite regularly for the last year and you feel like you've developed a healthy working relationship, why shouldn't you ask her for help with a money issue or a health issue, which isn't necessarily what Aphrodite is usually associated with? Why shouldn't you? In fact, there's some evidence that this is kind of how the Greek pantheon was worshipped, that you didn't necessarily have this pantheon and you were like, I'll call in this guy for that and this gal for that. But you would have devotees of Aphrodite. You'd have devotees of, whoever the heck else. I don't know why I don't have any gods coming to mind at the moment. Devotees of Hera, devotees of Zeus, devotees of Athena, who would really devote themselves to that individual deity and ask them for help in all aspects of their lives. And I don't see why we can't do the same thing. There are many angles to approach every problem, and in my opinion, turning to someone we are in relationship with is just always going to get us better results than asking a random stranger for help. That went a little bit into the witchy like, I don't know, witch theory or whatever. So maybe a little bit tangential for this episode. All right, our next tool in our toolbox, tool number 8. This is our final tool, although I've kind of got a tool 9 that's kind of a general overview tool. Spell work and ritual is tool number 8. And I'm going to suggest making your spell work and ritual easy and manageable. Because if you are suffering, if you're recovering from struggle and crisis, you might not have the energy to devote to a huge working. If you're healing, you are probably that witch who's like, oh gosh, it's the full moon. Oh man, I didn't even notice, right? Instead of, again, giving ourselves something to flagellate ourselves for not doing right, let's allow our spell work and ritual, which are intended to help us, let's allow them to be nourishing for us. So, by the way, $5 and up patrons do get a bonus episode with every episode of SassafrasCast, and for this month, my bonus episode is going to be about the topic of slow burn, easy spell work and ritual. I really geeked out about this topic. I think it's really exciting and interesting, so if that's interesting to you, if you're a $5 and up patron, that will be in your inbox sometime today or tomorrow. But to sum this up, the big takeaway is let's identify ritual that feels more meaningful than it feels demanding. Let's allow our ritual or magical practice to be a simple and restorative one at this time. Let's not get ourselves lost in grandeur and pomp and circumstance if all we really have the energy for is just to kind of show up at our altar or show up in 5 minutes of quiet that we get in our day and just vibe. That counts. Showing up in 5 minutes of quiet and vibing counts as a spiritual practice. Let's allow that to help us instead of beating ourselves up for what we are not doing. Let's take this one day at a time, and let's try not to grade ourselves. Conversely, this brings me to tool number 9. Let's grade ourselves generously as we are healing. If we show up at all for our spiritual life or our goals or our self-care as we're healing, let's give ourselves a gold star, because it's hard to make room for those types of concerns when just staying above water is a big struggle. If we are not showing up for our spiritual life while we're healing, let's also give ourselves a gold star, because it is wise to know our limits and boundaries and just do the things that are manageable. While we're on the subject, let's just grade ourselves well generally at this time. If we're struggling and we're trying to heal and recover, it's a great time to remind ourselves that our efforts matter. It's a great time for a ta-da list instead of a to-do list. It's such a cheesy cliche, but I really like it. In other words, anything you accomplish, no matter how big or small, goes on your list. And then at the end of the day, you're like, wow, look at what I did. I shoveled the snow. I ate breakfast. I got out of bed. Getting out of bed counts as an accomplishment, and it counts double if it feels hard to do. Brushing your teeth and taking care of your basic nourishment counts as an accomplishment that goes on your list. Showing up for your basic daily responsibilities counts as an accomplishment. If it takes any kind of energy at all, it counts. Let's have a practice of taking time to acknowledge all of the good work we are doing and letting our inner selves know, yes, I am proud of you for showing up, especially at the time when just showing up might be really hard for us. All right. Let's move into which you got this. This whole episode has been kind of a laundry list toolbox episode, but which you got this is a section of the podcast where I give you one small actionable thing that you can do that hopefully you can take away from this episode and maybe apply in your practice like right this minute today in a really easy way and get a little bit of boost out of, get a little bit of dopamine and serotonin, get a little bit of feeling positive and like you're growing. Here is my which you got this practice of the day. It is making a daily offering of joy. This is something that is on my daily resolutions list for February, and I have found it to be incredibly meaningful. This is a deeply simple practice. It's 2 parts. 1, identify a moment where you feel any type of joy and mark it. And 2, describe that joy and make it an offering. Now, this doesn't mean you're kind of offering it up if you're familiar with that concept. This doesn't mean you're denying yourself the joy. Instead, we're thinking of it like lighting one candle with another candle. Then both candles are lit, right? Then there's twice as much joy and you didn't have to do anything except for move the candle over. joy deepens when we share it. So if we identify our joy, that's like half the battle, right? When we're struggling, if we just set an intention, especially if it's an offering, because there's like an external accountability component there. If we just set an intention, like, I'm going to pay attention and notice when I have a moment of joy today, we are more likely to do it. We are more likely to actually acknowledge fleeting moments of joy and give them equal time, as opposed to the moments of stress and overwhelm that may be top of mind at the moment. So already that's a win. Who might we offer our joy to? Any spirit ally we are working with, our ancestors, our higher selves, a wounded part of you that could use a little bit of joy, your inner child. Imagine how powerful it is to say, I'm going to notice my joy. I'm not just going to notice it, but I am going to make a point of giving it as a gift to a part of myself that is hurting right now. What a beautiful gift. The land around you, we can offer our joy to the land, a friend or a loved one. You can do this two ways. You might choose to get a buddy and literally on purpose share your moments of joy with each other, kind of as a nifty accountability thing where you text each other like, I'm having a moment of joy right now. I'm petting my cat and it's great, right? Or you might choose to just kind of mentally direct that energy, that joyful energy, at someone you care about who you think might be able to use it that day. So kind of an internal or external practice. And the final idea that I have is offer your joy as energy to whoever needs it most. The other day, I have this pink candle that's been sitting on my altar. I lit it because a friend of mine was undergoing surgery and I wanted things to go well for her. And my practice, I'll be honest, has been spotty in the last couple months. So I haven't finished burning that candle. It was just sitting there. My friend's surgery has come and gone and it did go well and I'm grateful. And so there's the remainder of that candle. And the other day I just lit it and I was like, whatever energy is left here, whatever healing energy and intention is left here, I just want it to go to the person who needs it most. I think that's a really nice intention. It gives us that boost of being able to care for someone else and show up for someone else, which does feel good and helps our happiness too. And depending on what you believe, right? Maybe helps them out. Maybe also sends that energy over in a way that could be useful. It was really interesting too, when I lit that pink candle, it was my first kind of ritual that was deliberate and at my altar in a little while, in like probably a couple of weeks. And I lit it and I was like, may this healing energy just go wherever it is needed most. And not 2 hours later, a friend of mine posted in a witchy group that we're both in, asking for, energy, prayers, whatever, for another friend who was in the hospital. And I remember thinking, okay, I guess I know where my pink candle went today. And it was kind of a beautiful little, almost like a little gift of the universe, to remind me that even these very small offerings that maybe even feel random at the time can be meaningful for me. And I really hope that person did get that energy, and I really wish them well. I'm sending them more energy. All right, that got a little serious. So that is our toolbox episode, Psychospiritual Tools for Healing. I would love it if you would share with me your experiences with healing, your experience with what helps, what doesn't help, like don't do this because it doesn't help, I think I talked about some of that in this episode with like giving ourselves permission to play on easy mode instead of like self-flagellating about what we are and are not doing. I would love to hear your thoughts on this topic. I would love to hear them through, social media, through, if you're a patron, through right now if you're watching, or through Discord or whatever. And I would love to then turn around and share those with your permission, because on Twitter or on Facebook or whatever, because I think right now everyone needs healing and a rising tide lifts all boats. If we have resources that are helping us, let's not hoard them. Let's be like, hey y'all, this helped me. We're all struggling. How about you try it too? It can't hurt. That's another way we can show up compassionately for ourselves and each other. So wherever you are, whatever you are going through right now, whether you are listening to this episode in a timely way and have just been through the last couple years of this pandemic, and I'm sure personal stuff too, I wish you healing and I wish you love. Whether you are listening to this episode 5 years in the future and you just found it and you decided to listen to it because maybe it's related to where you are, I wish you healing and I wish you love. Here's where you can find me. I want to thank you for spending your time with me today, first of all. If you like this podcast, if you would rate it and review it wherever you listen to podcasts, that would be a real gift to me. That would be a real way to support the podcast. That's free. It only takes a couple minutes of time. And if you could even take a moment to share it with someone who you think might enjoy it, I would be really grateful. That's like a double gift. If you would like to support this podcast financially and unlock exclusive benefits, you can do so at patreon.com/Sassafras Tarot for $1 per month or more. Patrons get access to things like extra content, personalized tarot pulls, a witchy Discord community, and more. If you have a question, idea, or suggestion, you can email me anytime at sassafrastarot@gmail.com. And you can follow me on social media at Sassafras Tarot on Facebook, Instagram, Twitch, YouTube, and Twitter. I'm Sassafras Tarot everywhere, and the way to spell that is SassafrasTarot. I chose the two most challenging words to spell to be my brand because that's who I am as a person. If you would like to order a reading from me, you can do so at etsy.com/shop/Sassafras Tarot. As always, I am going to take you out with a song. And I spent some time thinking about what song I wanted to share for kind of a healing vibe today. I'm going to take you out with a song of mine called Ride It Out. This is a song I actually wrote for a friend's Christmas movie. And it's not specifically a Christmas song. I did put something in there about twinkly colored lights, but it's really a song about healing. And it is a song about showing up compassionately for ourselves and others when we need healing. So that's the song I decided to share with y'all today. And I offer this song with the intention that, maybe it's like, 2 minutes of your day. It's a short song. Maybe it's 2 minutes of your day where you don't do anything except receive. You just listen and receive some good intentions from me, a random third party who may or may not know you, but who does care and want you to heal and feel better. May this song be a source of healing for you, in other words. You gotta ride it out. 'Cause you can't hide from life, you gotta ride it out. But I'll be by your side, so let's ride. Baby, I know you've been holding it all inside. I'm not gonna be the one to push you. I want you to take your time. But when those colored lights twinkle in your eyes, I hope you'll chance a glance at mine. And I hope you see beneath that tree where I've been waiting this whole time, and you'll join me for a ride. You gotta ride it out. 'Cause you can't hide from life, you gotta ride it out. But I'll be by your side, so let's ride. Baby, I know it's like yesterday, 5 years ago. And I know you wanna take it all back somehow, and you can't let go. And you see somebody's ghost everywhere you go. But there's one thing I know for sure: there was nothing you could have done to change the past, and the future's yours, baby, it's yours. The world's an uncertain place when you step beyond your day. Yeah. happen anytime. You can't hide from fate. But if it makes you nervous, slip your hand inside of mine, and I'll be right here beside you, baby, one step at a time. If you join me for a ride, ride it out. 'Cause you can't hide from life, you gotta ride it out. But I'll be by your side, so let's ride. Oh baby, let's ride. Thank you so much. Thank you for spending time with me today. I wish you healing, I wish you growth, and I wish you happiness. If you enjoyed that song, please search for it wherever you listen to music. It's on all of the different streaming services as well as my website. Search for Rorie Kelly, RorieKelly, or visit my website at roriekelly.com. You can also find me on your favorite social media site on Facebook and Twitter. I am at Rorie Kelly. On Instagram, I am at Rorie Makes Songs. I am also everywhere for this podcast as at Sassafras Tarot. Thank you so much for listening. We'll talk again soon.